Hello, hello, MouseHunt. Welcome to Feedback Friday. It is February 8, 2019. Great to see everybody. Hello, everyone in the chat there. Hello, Ray, Dennis, Bloodshot. Brian says, "We Dave." Inu, KDM, Salim, Stejan. Hello, Beth, Traco, Eileen. Eileen says it's -3 there. It's 7 degrees there. That's good. I'll take anything above freezing. It is a little bit of a chilly day here in Toronto. We have a little bit of light snow coming down. It's just below freezing. We had some wonky weather, actually, because we had some freezing rain pull through, and that kind of coated everything in ice. And then the temperature came up to, I think, 8 degrees above freezing. So that sort of melted all the ice off the trees over to the ground. And then overnight, just boom, dropped right back below freezing, which just was the perfect conditions for an ice rink pretty well everywhere in black ice, but we kind of walked in like penguins to work today and made it in. Dave is still alive, woohoo. Yes, I believe Jacob had Feedback Friday for 3 weeks in a row. It's kind of the way the schedule worked out a little bit. I was off for a week, and I think I was off during the week that I would normally do it, and that led to Jacob 3 weeks in a row, but I am back. And actually, I'll discuss it more at the end, but I think I'll do Feedback Friday next week as well, and we'll do a little bit of a marketplace preview. So on that note, we'll jump right into things here. We've got a few items to get some feedback on, a few announcements to make as well. And first up is the removal of the old trap selector. And so you can see here I got a couple images on the left side here. Closest to me is what we call the old layout, how the trap selector looks, and on the right is the new layout, how the trap selector works. So to give a little context, several years ago, I think it was 2014 actually, we overhauled how various sections of the game loaded. We also updated the layout of several sections, most notably the camp section there. The update was kind of a large undertaking. We launched it. When we launched it, it was a bit of a work in progress. And so with that in mind, we added a toggle in the game settings to switch between old layout and new layout. While we collected feedback and made a few tweaks to that new layout as well. But since then, we have ported, I think, every section of the game to this new system except the camp section. And currently the only differences between old and new layout, if you have in your game settings, you can toggle between those two. I think it says new layout, old layout. The only differences are this camp section here and the navigation buttons across the top of the game. So we've reached a point now where it's just been the extremely old camp section here, the one that you see there, is just not really technically feasible to maintain anymore. It's proven quite difficult to keep supporting that version while still adding new features and content to the game. As you can imagine, a lot of the times we have to test everything twice. Some code has to get written twice to support both the layouts, and over time it's become increasingly cumbersome and not quite as feasible to keep things up and running smoothly and continue working on things at a good pace. So on that note, on March 26 is when this old version of the camp selector will no longer be available. It's going to be replaced with the version that the new layout works. So that is March 26. I believe that is a Tuesday. That said, it's important to note, though, that the toggle in game settings is still going to be there. And so you can still, if you prefer the look and feel of those colorful kind of gem-style navigation buttons, the rainbow theme up here above me, you'll still be able to use that if you just prefer the way that looks. And that doesn't really present too much of a technical challenge to continue to maintain. So that may maintain or remain in the game as a toggle for the foreseeable future anyway. So after March 26, you can still have those little colorful rainbow buttons if that's the look and feel you prefer. It's just the trap selector in the camp section. Sejan says fresh coat. Yes, I think we called it the fresh coat layout when it was launched. The trap effectiveness meter was broken anyway. That's the thing. There's been a lot of sort of new features that have come out, and they're just not compatible with the way the old trap selector worked. And so it's kind of come to a point as the frustrations mounted maintaining that, and it started to become more and more of a time commitment that we had to make the choice to deprecate it, as we're calling it. It will no longer be supporting that old version of the camp layout. Just out of curiosity, anyone in the chat, does anyone use that old layout? And what brings you to it, or what do you enjoy about using it? Is it the camp page trap selector, or do you like the look and feel of the navigation buttons at the top? KDM says we need an event to properly send off the old layout. Does that mean the freshly painted egg disappears as well? Yeah, that's a good point, Stej. We'll have to give some thought to that during the egg hunt. And Brian had a similar comment there. Yep, Michelle says the toggle will still be there for the old layout of the HUD. Yes, and hopefully that's here what I'm trying to show with these images here. There'll still be a toggle, and so you'll be able to choose between the style of navigation buttons that you prefer at the top of the game. But in the actual camp section is where the only significant change is going to happen. Sally says, I still use the old layout, like the buttons better. Okay. Peter and Tarako use the new one. Most people like the old buttons better. That was the vibe we got to speaking to hunters on the forums, Facebook page, Discord, was that it was more the kind of colorful buttons. And that even might give us some thought to maybe we can spruce up the UI or maybe kind of find a middle ground somewhere between the navigation buttons as well. But yeah, Sally said she likes the buttons. Michelle loves the new one. Took me a few days to get used to it, but always use it now. Stashian says that admin has 0 friends online, sad. This isn't my test environment, yeah, that screenshot. So I didn't have any friends online. Dennis also uses the old buttons. People in Discord who like the old layout tend to be really resistant to switching. Indeed, change is a difficult thing, and I think we've all experienced it in different apps and websites over the years as the interface changes and it introduces that little bit of anxiety of having to get used to a new way of doing things. But hopefully the new UI, there's also new features, new functionality. It's a little bit quicker, it works better. So hopefully it's a better experience once you do get used to it. We certainly knew that some players enjoyed the look and the feel of the old camp section. So that's why we did our best to continue to functionally support it for as long as we could. It just has a very different technical approach, a very dated one at that. And it just began to affect how reliably we could make new features and content. So as soon as it started to kind of hurt the development of the game a little bit, that started to motivate us to make the decision to say goodbye. That said, I encourage anybody that's using the old layout, if you're watching this recorded or in the summary as well, I'll put a note there. Take the opportunity, try out the new layout, take it for a spin. You can enable it in settings. I'm pretty confident that after trying it out, you're going to like the new features that the camp page trap selector has. And then any final feedback as well. I'll post a summary here. I welcome feedback and suggestions in the Feedback Friday summary, or you can go to the UI testing forum in-game as well if you want to create a thread, maybe a dedicated topic about something specific about it. If there's one last little thing you're clinging on to that trap page camp selector that you'd like to see us add to the new one, that's a good place to let your voice be heard. Brian says, I love how much faster the new layout is. That is one of the main benefits as well. It was in 2014, like I said, you'd click something and the whole page would reload. It'd be a little bit slow. And so it's a worse experience as a player because you're waiting longer for things to load. As well, it's a little bit harder on the servers because it's more data to fetch, more rendering to do, and more stuff to send back from the server back to your web, or from the server back to your web browser. Whereas the new layout does more of passing data back and forth. So it's a little lightweight, more lightweight on the servers. It's also much faster to load as well. So I think it should be a good feel all around. Michelle says, does not normally like change. Not too many people do, right? You have to kind of get used to it. Ben says, just pull the plug. Well, we want to give everyone plenty of heads up and one last opportunity, a few weeks, over a month, I guess. That's March 26th. Is that the date I said? Yes, March 26th. So there's still plenty of time for people to give some final feedback. We also didn't want to remove it right when an event launches, so we're kind of massaging that date around dates of other releases as well, so that this will be, I think this will coordinate with the shutdown of the birthday event, if I recall correctly. So the birthday event will come to an end, and the trap page camp page trap selector as well is going to get deprecated, the old one. Sejin says, is this the last big change in MH version 3? I mean, tough to say for sure. Destin says, is this a step in MH 4.0? No, that's still kind of early days. We're doing a lot of kind of proof of concept work still there. What's going to help a lot is we expanded the dev team. We hired a new dev to work on MouseHunt as well. We were able to make that work out, and that should hopefully free up a little bit of time to work on more sweeping changes as well. Sally says, okay, I switched. Even good change is hard for most people. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, give it a try. Like I said, if you like the colorful look and feel of those buttons here that I have on the other slide, those won't go away. So after March 26, that toggle's basically going to change between old and new layout to say something maybe like colorful buttons, or I don't know, we'll have to come up with a phrase. And that'll be the only thing that the toggle does is change those buttons from that kind of taupe gradient to the more gem 3D rainbow colored buttons. Massage it well, make it tender. Where is the marketplace update, asks Ben. We'll get to that. That's my third item on the list. And then I think actually next week we'll really go into detail on the marketplace update because it is coming soon. Jeneth says, I like the old trap selector better. You can maybe let us know what it is about it that you like. Like I said, too, I'm going to post a summary here on my Facebook page and on the forums, or you could start a thread in the UI testing forum. Let us know what it is you like about the old trap selector, and we'll see what we can do to maybe accommodate some of that in the new trap selector as well. So definitely want any feedback, suggestions from players. Have up till March 26th before it goes away, so we do have a little bit of time to tweak a few things here and there. Classic versus contemporary HUD. That's some good wording there from Brian. Why is it called rainbow buttons anyway? Well, it's the colors of the rainbow. You can see it starts in yellow and it ends on red. I don't actually know if that's the correct order, but I always assumed that was the order that a rainbow was in. Beth says, speaking of buttons, any chance we could get a button for the adventure book to make it easier to access once it's been hidden in the settings? Yeah, that's an interesting thought. It'd be a little bit quicker than going and turning it back on and loading camp again. That said, when you do turn it off, it will reappear anytime a new adventure appears. So when an event starts, even if you chose to hide the adventure book, it automatically turns that toggle off and shows you the adventure book again when a new one has been added to make sure you don't miss that. I like the green camp button. Yeah, it is a pretty juicy camp button. That was replaced with the horn timer. Old school rather than classic. These are all options. Dark night mode, please. I think that might not be something possible, but that's actually a good suggestion if we do a whole new iteration of the game. I think that would make something a lot easier to incorporate. All right, on that, we'll move on here. We have a few topics to get to today, and the next topic is after Moussu Picchu. So we've been on and off discussing a few things on Feedback Friday, getting a few teasers or not really previews, but a few teasers and some mentions of an Archduke area, and I want to give everybody an update where we're at there. I've been doing quite a bit of brainstorming, prototyping, lots of proof of concept work on an area to follow Moussu Picchu. It's planned to require the rank of Archduke or Archduchess. After a number of iterations, we finally arrived, I think, at a version that shows some promise, where the hunters will be taken to the skies to explore a multitude of floating islands and put every power type to use in adventure to track down some dragons up in the sky. You can even see in the artwork of the map here, there's a little bit of a teaser or a nod to that idea where there's an island floating off in the clouds. Now the scope and scale, after we finally arrived at this idea that shows some promise, the scope and the scale of the area, it's quite large. As you can imagine, it's incorporating all the power types. I think right now we have in the ballpark of 58 mice, which makes it almost one of the most mice all at once. But the problem being, even if we started right now that things have kind of firmed up a little bit, it looks like it's going to be a challenge to finish that up before the start of next event season. So if we started now, even sort of a optimistic projection of somewhere around September, and that makes Halloween event just around the corner, which is a little awkward in an event of that size. It's going to kind of drop, and then immediately some events will come. So it might kind of not be the best timing for that. So with that in mind, we're considering working on one or two smaller Archduke, Archduchess areas, with maybe one of them being a lead-up to that floating island-themed area that would potentially then upgrade that to be the first Viceroy area in 2020. Now, we'd have to kind of see where we're at there before making the call if it would be a Viceroy area or if it would just be a continuation being an Archduke and Archduchess. Give us our Archduke area, says KDM. Yoke came through there with the order of the rainbow, and yeah, it looks like the buttons don't quite line up. Oh, Ben going back there, the adventure book. Oh, a quick way to reference it to answer questions for newer players. Yeah, that's a good point. Brian says Valor Rift, 8 tiers of underground hell. That's actually one of the ideas there that we're looking for some inspiration on. Every power type, including parental, depends. Either it would be a little bit of an Easter egg or a little bit of a joke kind of nod to parental, or we might take that opportunity to remove that power type from the game. Will Rift be used? It might be fair to say almost every power type in the game. Rift's a little 50-50 if we would use Rift in that area or not. We'd have to kind of see if one of the themes could work out. Rift Valor for Archduke. Oh, that's Brian again. When is the Tribal Rift coming then? That might be a ways out. Because that would probably be a larger Rift release, just thinking about the scope and size of the tribal areas. Stejan says, so transition area between Moussu Picchu leading into the Archduke area and the big AD islands. Yes, that's kind of the idea we're toying with. So there's two sort of concepts here, and as Brian there suggested, one is a Valor-themed Rift, and these aren't exclusive. With depending on the size and scale of it, maybe both of them. But again, a little early to tell until things are firmed up and we can actually see what the timelines look like. But one, something relatively smaller, Valor-themed Rift, it would require Archduke, Archduchess, maybe something where you're taking on some, or you're challenging some champions of the Rift. It could provide slightly better points and gold than Grand Duke areas, and maybe a few slight upgrades to Rift equipment as well. But again, kind of a little bit of a smaller sized area. But again, at least making that step so that there is an area that is sort of appropriately challenging for Archduke, Archduchess. And another area, like I was hinting at there, sort of a lead up to that final floating island themed area. It'd take place still in the sky probably, where it would be an area that acts as a port that's going to allow hunters to set sail through the skies and then explore those floating islands. But this would, you can almost think of it maybe like the fungal caverns before the labyrinth. It still has some meaningful objectives, some things to do, some resources maybe, but then it sort of acts as that launching point to then move on to something that's a little bit bigger in scale. Perhaps something, I know Franco's throwing around some interesting ideas of how the area could work, or thematically kind of sky pirates up in the sky that you're trying to secure that important sky port from the pirates before you could then take to the skies yourself and explore those floating islands. Grind another 8 tiers of potion farming. Well, if we did do a Valor Rift, I don't think we would lock ourselves into doing exactly 8 potions and going straight up. We'd probably try to find something that has a little bit more depth into it for an Archduke area. Something that's a little less focused on super grindy loot collection, and maybe something that just has a little bit of an interesting phase shift or something like that. But definitely looking for some inspiration there. EP says, I want to ask a quick question about Archduke area based on something I saw on Longtail server, but that might be spoilers. Longtail, I think, is synced up exactly with the Lunar New Year. It just has the marketplace going, and we'll get to that next. We did get a few players on Discord to take a spin through Longtail to see the marketplace and get some feedback and suggestions. Law Sky Pirates, potentially, yeah, could incorporate Law power type. We'd have to kind of see if that would fit in well in terms of the overall game progression, but that would be a good thematic fit. It would give a good place as well to put your Law traps to use in a very high-level Archduke area. New rank when top Sage is 69% right now, says Orange. Still has a way to go, I would think. I believe the title after Sage is going to, at the moment anyway, just so nothing breaks, yes, Sage is last, is going to act as a bit of a level cap. So actually, if somehow tomorrow the Hunter graduated out of Sage, they would level up to the final title, and the progress bar goes away, and you stop getting title progression. That said, before they get there, we might decide to add new titles. But that's just kind of a safety measure, because before that, the game was always assuming there'd be a title after that, And so we just added some functionality to add a cap to make sure nothing breaks if somebody does level up, and we don't add new titles before that happens. I took so many years before even progressing one tier, or possessing one tier 8, and that's through events help too. Yeah, definitely. If when you think about a Valor Rift, like I said, I don't think it means we're a carbon copy of the King's Gauntlet. By all means, that area doesn't have a whole lot of interest going for it, so we probably want to do something a little bit different. But we probably, I would imagine, to tie that in, want that idea of 8 different kind of tiers or groups of mice that you're hunting. That's something definitely we're looking for some inspiration from. I know we've put together a few rough ideas. We're going to kind of soundboard that off some of the team. Swift says, for Valor Rift, why not a grand tournament style area where champions of different parts fight each other? That does sound interesting. Valor Rift, another discussion about luck affecting loot drops. Yeah, if I recall, I think the King's Gauntlet is the only area in the game that has luck disabled in terms of loot drops. Swift says, a little weird for the multi-power type gauntlet to become a single rift power type area. Yeah, potentially, but I think the rift helps tie that in where it stays consistent. Like I said, I think we'd still want this idea of 8 sort of phases, but they'd all be rift phases. Brian says, Space Pirates. Made a fun forum post 2 years about it. Maybe it'd be time to dig that up and see if we could adapt that to Sky. I don't think we've quite reached space. We haven't been able to break the planet's atmosphere in the world of MouseHunt. I want to hunt at that neighboring lake, says Jonathan. KDM plot twist Valor Rift based on the tournament hall and the King's Arm. Actually, I did put together a bit of a rough idea that incorporates the tournament hall and the gauntlet as 2 different things. But like I said, I want to kind of soundboard that. It's not quite fleshed out yet. Stejan says, if the Archduke area ended up being the floating isles, would it be an idea to create an alternative route through Queso Geyser to enter it through Moussu Picchu? Right now, Queso Geyser, which is in the works and coming along quite nicely, that is slotted to be a count area that will then unlock the Fungal Cavern. So you can go through Varmint Valley and can arrive at Moussu Picchu, and that's sort of everything all comes back together to kind of set up that big floating islands themed area as sort of a big end game area where you can put all the power types to use. Darn Wrong says, hi, I'm late. Is this about a new area? I just want to give an update on where we're at. Up till now, I think we just called it the Archduke area. So that kind of helped clarify there, because now things have been firmed up a little bit more. We found an idea that we think has promise. Probably henceforth will be referred to as the floating island area, or that's sort of the theme of the area, is utilizing those floating islands that are to the east of Moussu Picchu. But because that's a bit of a larger scale area, we're discussing doing 1 or 2 smaller Archduke areas, and that would allow us to be a little bit more productive, and ultimately I think we would complete more content over the next 14 months if we focus on 1 or 2 small areas and kind of in tandem start working on that larger area to come in 2020. We barely reached the skies yet. The highest we went was when the train leaps off Daredevil Canyon. I would think the peaks of Moussu Picchu are higher than the heights that the train reach. And definitely these islands will be quite high up. Or Lunar New Year, although it says 500 feet, but the illustration, I'll say, it's meant to be humorous, goes into space just a little bit, so that might be an exception. Smaller birthday event this year, says KDM. We'll probably get into the birthday event on a different Feedback Friday, but something, I don't think it's too small scale. And we'll see, again, see what player feedback is like, but it might turn into something that we can potentially repeat throughout the years to celebrate the birthday. Brian says, with Zocor and Moussu Picchu high-tier traps, seems like the Queso Canyon traps and Fort Rock's traps, which were released, are kind of irrelevant. It depends on sort of the progression you go through the game. So you might have the perspective of being, playing for years and years, and you have access to absolutely everything. And so, of course, sort of the top tier is going to be the best, but there's plenty of players who are using those traps as well as sort of a means to an end to upgrade to higher level traps. So they all kind of slot in somewhere to fill in the gaps and help people reach basically Moussu Picchu is sort of the end goal, and then what comes after Moussu Picchu. Yep, and Brian says, was it the intention to retroactively add those traps in lower ranked areas? Yep, just kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. Draconic was a huge gap where you would get, if you didn't have limited edition traps, you'd get the Ice Maiden as a knight, and then that's it until Moussu Picchu. It was a bit of a big gap, so there's a nice little sort of middle trap to help you then when you arrive at Moussu Picchu to get the Ballista trap going. Debbie asks, will there be Valentine's Mice this year? Yes, I think we're planning to launch the Valentine's Mice somewhere around Valentine's Day. And similar to last year, they'll be dropping the Nyao Gouda cheese. Ibrahim says, what about reducing minimizing event periods, which takes up 6 months so we can have more leeway? It has been a discussion point on many Feedback Friday and on the forums and Discord as well. It is something kind of we're playing. We're trying to find that nice balance. Hopefully, if we find a good birthday event that we can repeat for a few years, that'll help as well. But definitely, I think the game's at a point where we need more higher level areas. Kind of, if you think back years ago, if you were with us when we branded it Year of the Noble, we were at a similar impasse where a lot of high level players and no high level areas. So we're kind of in a similar spot here where now the urgency is on creating some Archduke areas and even thinking beyond that. Skyblimp for Hunter says Destin, maybe. We'll see. Darren Wrong says, will the Lunar New Year be extended without prior notice again? I don't think so, because there's not too much in the way of sort of final completion. We were very conscious this year to even that 500 meter or 500 foot track to have it be a very above and beyond sort of stretch goal. If you want to reach 50 luck, we move the skins down lower on the track. So if you're just looking to collect the skins, it's more within your grasp. And that 500 is for sort of above and beyond super active players to try to reach the top, but then there's nothing sort of super unique or limited edition at the top of the track. So I don't think we would need to extend it. You're quickly approaching your 1000th mouse. Any big plans? Not at the moment, but I know Jacob pointed that out as well. Did anyone mention about the costumed rat mouse for 2020? That'll be a good year, I think, for MouseHunt to have the year of the rat would be good. I think I'm a rat, if I recall, I'm 84. I guess that's a nice coincidence then that I went on to do mouse and rodent-related things. Sejan says, if the Archduke area gets delayed with the small Archduke areas, will the small ones be forever grindy, like the current Froma Rift and Moussu Picchu, or will there just be teasers that we can go and finish quickly? A little bit early to say sort of what the overall feel of them would be. By forever grindy, do you mean something you can forever repeat and just kind of keep working on collecting loot drops and crowning mice? Yeah, again, probably too early to say. I know some areas feel very sort of episodic. Like when you finish the adventure, you feel like, other than King's Crowns, I got everything. I'm good. What's next? And some areas do feel more like, okay, I'm going to set up and really sink my teeth in here. There's some loot drops that I want to farm. Less than 3Z says, will there be any returning chromes this year? Nothing to report, really. Debbie says, yay, thanks, Dave. Maybe I lost context. Oh, what did you ask last? Will it be Valentine's Mice? Good to see you're excited. Smaller Halloween event, maybe. I think we're in a spot where we'd repeat the Halloween event for a little while, and again, to free up some time for us to be working on content in tandem with events. Darn Wrong says, a lot of my high-level friends have left the game because nothing to be done anymore. Definitely needs high-level areas. I agree. Definitely it's becoming an urgency, and it's quite natural when you run out of objectives to kind of not be as interested. So I think it's important in terms of adding fun things to the game as well as for the long-term health of the game to keep adding some high-level areas and new objectives to achieve. Laura says, how about Mount Olympus Valhalla area for Archdukes that will lead to the floating islands? That's an interesting theme as well, sort of Greek mythology and the Vikings. but I want new skins and play a bit with the highest luck, says Jeneth. Well, we lowered the skins down on the track. So there's no skin at the 500 point on the track. I think, what is it, at 236 or 300, somewhere around there, which should be achievable. Just kind of doing some good amount of cheese farming per day. You should be able to light up that many candles if you're active. M1000 mouse for Rodentia Rift. Drop first, save it for years like the original M400, says Brian. Yep, that M400, we held on to that for a while. We still have the game boss in storage, that is correct. I don't know if that mouse would ever make it into the game. Tarako says, can you tell us how to target the costume pig mouse? Been over 13 hours without seeing one and hunting with Nyan Yauda there. Yeah, beyond that, not too much to target. I didn't think the encounter rate's all that low, so the deviation shouldn't be too wide on it. Cecilia says, will we get another map like the Lightning with the new area? A little too early to tell, but good to know. You know, if you're interested, let us know that if that's the type of things you're interested in. Very Best says, we need some new charms, even possible to reuse Lunar New Year charms to get the Lunar New Year mice. Sally says, are we ever going to get the Platinum Tournament base? Hard to say. I know we've definitely wanted to overhaul tournaments for a while. Andrew even put together some nice little idea stubs there, incorporating some community feedback, but just unfortunately hasn't been the thing we've been able to prioritize. Like I said, sort of the major urgency on us right now, I think, is to have some new high-level areas in the game. So everything kind of is on the back burner outside of that. Session says, can we expect a repeat of Lunar New Year next year? I would think so. My gut would tell me yes. Certainly it seems like a very popular, well-received event. So I don't know if we have any plans of changing that. I kind of like the thematic of it as well. It feels so unique that it's this one time a year that you have this amazing ability to double loot. It's something you can look forward to all year long. In the back of your mind, you can kind of hoard a few materials. But okay, I'm saving these for Lunar New Year. It's just, it feels fun. It has a lot of fun anticipation to me. Is there any event of mice attraction bonus this year by using old Lunar New Year charms? I don't believe so. All right, and that we'll move on to the last point here, and this is sort of a segue into next week's Feedback Friday here. So we'll kind of wrap up talking about the marketplace a little bit, and we've discussed it a little bit here and there on during other Feedback Fridays in the past. But the marketplace update, the big marketplace update, is nearly upon us here. If all goes according to plan, I probably should have put an asterisk up there. February 26th, which is not too far away, the new marketplace, we're planning to launch it on Tuesday, February 26th. And that's going to finally bring together the mobile and the browser versions of the marketplace will come together, so you'll be able to trade between. It'll just be one singular marketplace. The biggest change with the marketplace is that it will allow you to buy and sell partial orders. So if somebody puts up 10,000 Super Brie for sale, they could sell one piece to 10,000 people. They could sell it all 10,000 to one person, or anywhere in between. So you just get a nice little progress bar as your order fills up. If you're curious to see how that works in action, and you have the mobile app, just try play around with the marketplace a little bit in the mobile app, and basically the browser is going to work in the same way. Use the exact same system, different interface to access it. But like I said, I think next week I'll do a little bit more of an in-depth preview, grab a few more screenshots of the marketplace. There's still some interface, polish that word, tidying up some banners and some colors. The little icons up on Super Brie there that you can see, those are all kind of placeholder dev art. I think it's ones for frequently traded, valuable, recommended for your area, that sort of thing. We're going to make some nice looking icons for that. Super Brie Plus will skyrocket as small quantities sell for less now. It will remove that awkwardness. I don't know if that will, I don't want to predict what effect that would have on the price. If anything, I think it would increase the liquidity of the marketplace. I don't know, I guess there's, if anything, it might go the other way, because I think people maybe can ask for a few gold more per piece by doing a small batch, because it just looks like a smaller number and it's more convenient for people to take on. But definitely will be a little bit of a shift. It'll be a bit of a change to get used to, but overall I think the reaction so far has been positive while we've been testing it. And it just makes it much easier to use the marketplace. If you're sitting on 5,000 simple orbs and you don't want them, you want to sell them, you can sell all 5,000 in just a few clicks, and they're, boom, out of your inventory. You have gold in your inventory instead, rather than you'd have to make countless little tiny postings of simple orbs, because odds are no one wants to buy all 5,000. But you can probably find, a few hundred people to buy your orbs, and you can just do that in a few clicks now. Can we use the marketplace to trade now too? It's going to be a little bit more anonymous, so actually that will be much more difficult to achieve, of putting up a posting in the marketplace and then sort of having a friend buy it for a price that no one else is going to buy it for. That should be not impossible, but it would be much more trickier to pull off. Sort of, you don't see listings anymore, you just see there's this much Super Breed for sale at these prices. But you have no idea whether you're buying from one person or 1,000 people when you buy 1,000 of something. Stejan says, no more putting a selling offer of a large quantity to play the market. The tariff always made that a little bit awkward as well, where if you're buying and selling, you always have to come out ahead by 10%, because that's the tariff. So that already kind of reduces how much sort of market speculation goes on. But by all means, I think that's a fun part of the game as well. For some players get a lot of enjoyment out of playing it like a little bit of a stock market. It's kind of exciting, or trying to predict what's going to happen when new content comes to the game or something like that. By no means, is it the focus of the game, is that aspect of it, but I think it adds a nice little flair. Orange says, will there be more item in Marketplace along with this update? I don't believe so. Jonathan says, whoa, Feedback Friday is happening. It's not currently advertised in MH. I think we might have something in place so the banner doesn't appear when there's another camp banner. I could be wrong there. And just because the Lunar New Year page is already pretty hefty, that would push it down a bit. And I was away for a week there. I think I was away from a Friday up to a Monday there, so I was away for 2 Fridays. I was gone for 6, 7. I was gone for 7 business days, and so I missed 2 Fridays. And Jacob fulfilled my duties. Can we have an option to hide the kits altogether and never buy kits on the marketplace? I think the interface is much easier to use as well. And again, next week we'll do a little bit more of an in-depth preview. But you can favorite things a lot easier. The landing page, based on where you're currently hunting, it'll show recommended for your area. So if you're in Queso Geyser, there's just a very quick and easy way to access Wild Tonic, for example. That's what you can favorite. I think it's 8. I think there's 8 things you can set as favorites as well if you kind of want to either watch them on the market or it's something you frequently buy and sell. So it should be a lot quicker and easier to find what you're looking for while sort of not looking at the things that you don't care about. Johnson says, also seconding the idea that costume mice in general should be more frequent. We can double check. I didn't think they were all that rare, but I can double check with Franco. Brian says, will Valentine's and Narnia game mice be released sometime? The Narnia games mice, no. But the Valentine's mice, sometime around Valentine's Day, just for a few days, similar to last year. I think it was 3 days, maybe 2-3 days they were out for. And they're going to drop Valentine's charms, which have a great attraction bonus on them, as well as Now Gouda cheese, because it's red. We have been looking for a way to maybe incorporate those Narnia games mice into the game as a whole. That said, it's not sort of at the top of our priority list at the moment. But I think, again, sort of with this many events going on, it's been reducing how much new, or how often we can add new permanent areas to the game. And so that might be an area where maybe we don't need a sort of winter or summer games themed event going on per se. Especially considering no one comes around, not every single year. So. Traction rate for the pig should be around 4 or 5%. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I was away actually when the Lunar New Year event got put together there, so I didn't even do much testing on it or anything. Otherwise, I normally at least have a rough ballpark somewhere in the back of my mind. I can double check. 5% is starting to get to that area, like a 1 in 20 chance. You can go a while without capturing it. Right? 0.8 times 0.8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a 10% chance you go without it for 10 hunts in a row. Yeah, but by 20, you're looking at a pretty slim odds of going much more than 20. So you'd be at 5% anyway. I don't know off the top of my head what it is, but 5%, it's pretty hard to go 20 in a row, although it'll certainly happen to 1 or 2% of people. Did you guys forget to add Lucky Rabbit Charm to the Costume Rabbit Mouse? Yeah, I don't know what the plan for that is. I don't know if it's been retired per se. And on that note, we'll wrap things up. So again, quick recap. I wanted to stress that on March 26, the old camp page trap selector is going to be done away with, and so the camp page is going to look like it does on the right there. I'll be posting my summary on my Facebook page as well as on the forum, so by all means, if there's anything you've been enjoying about that old version of the trap selector, let us know what that is, and we can kind of hopefully take that feedback into our minds and hopefully incorporate something into the new trap selector, or at least kind of put down some notes and see if there's a patch we'd want to do after launch. Lots of feedback after it goes live as well. And as usual, we're receptive to feedback both before and after something goes out. So please, if you're using the old trap selector, try out the new one. Let us know your feedback before March 26. And then an important note on that there will still be a toggle after that if you prefer to use the more colorful looking navigation buttons. If you just like the look and feel of that, those aren't going anywhere. There'll still be a toggle to use those. So make sure you let us know what you think there. And we'll end on trivia. And actually, I was trying not to say it aloud because I think Brian inadvertently came up with the answer to today's trivia question about 3 minutes into the stream. But the trivia question is, which area saw the most mice added in a single release? We were talking about this floating islands themed area that that is quite large in scope that we're toying with, and it was around the 58 mice mark. This area saw 60 mice enter the game in a single release. And I think first there is Salim with Sunken City, followed quickly by Peter, Jaron, Beth says lol Sunken City, Mark, Stejan, it's just Sunken City's flowing in. Chip Merkley says the Labyrinth. I don't think so. I don't think the Labyrinth had 60. 60 was a lot of mice all at once. The Sunken City was probably one of the larger scale areas that we put together in terms of technical development, art assets required. Even the heads-up display took quite a bit of effort to put together that HUD. Sunken City is correct. The answer there, I've posted that in the chat as well. There's a reward link. If you're watching this recorded on YouTube, you should be able to see the chat now, I think, to the left. So you should be able just to click that link in the chat that I just posted. But if not, I can put it up here as well. Because actually, I think you need to watch it on YouTube Gaming itself in order for that functionality to work. So there, I'll replace that. 2 temporal shadow plates again! Oh no! Just every time, it makes my heart drop a little bit. I know it's not temporal shadow plates, but in the back of my mind, it always creates a little anxiety when people say that. Yeah. Salim says, can we get a Rift Sunken City? It'd be quite a ways out before we're kind of going in the order of progression. So almost as you see things in the adventure book, that's sort of the order that we're going in the Rift storyline there. We were going to do Tribal Isles probably next, but as I mentioned earlier in the stream, we're looking for something that's relatively smaller to do this year for Archdukes. And I think maybe Valor, we could have some fun with the theme of 8 different groups of mice. Probably not collecting potions for months on end sort of gameplay, but I think we could have some fun with doing a Valor Rift as well, and that would be much smaller than the Tribal Isles. When can we fit Fulmina Tooth instead of Scroll of Sharks? That's an interesting idea, actually. I really like that. I like that suggestion from Destin there to start loading up the School of Sharks with Fulmina's teeth. I don't know how no one suggested that before. That's a pretty cute idea. That makes a lot of thematic sense. 5 water jet charms. Thank you, Jonathan, for saying the actual thing that the Larry reward link gave out, rather than giving me the mild anxiety attack of 2 temporal shadow plates. Won't load for me too. I think you will need to load it in a browser. If you're on mobile, it doesn't always work. Other than that, check your journal as well. When you claim one of those rewards, it does get a little confirmation message in your journal to make sure, it has a little bit of a confirmation, a receipt to make sure that it worked for you. So yeah, sometimes the page might not load, but when you look at your journal, you still have the item. All right, well, hunters, then I'll wrap things up here as we just hit 45 minutes. Thanks so much for joining me. I will see you next week, where we will go over, I think, a little bit more of an in-depth preview of the marketplace, and we'll be looking for any final feedback, comments, suggestions, impressions. We'll still have a little bit of time to tweak a few things here and there, I think. So we'll be looking for some feedback there. I'll see you next Friday. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching, and happy hunting.